right, everybody, welcome back. It is the final hour of the show. Special guest calling in. I'm not sure exactly where, but his name, Mr. Arthur C., I believe Olivier, if I'm to say it correctly, but he'll correct me on that. He's an American politician and was a Libertarian candidate for the Vice President of the United States in the year of 2000, in the 2000 election, as a running mate to then Harry Brown. And he also has a project out called Operation Terror, the 9/11 story you were not supposed to know, available on DVD and digital copy, or you can even rent this thing. You can find that at operationterror.com. That's operationterror.com. And I think I covered you okay there, Mr. Olivier. That's correct, right? All right.
Yes,
well, welcome
right.
to Inside the Eye. Welcome to Inside the Eye Live.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. So I understand you live in Riyadh?
I live in Riyadh now. I split time largely Riyadh and the Philippines, south of Manila. I'm from LA. I actually am a Los Angelino. 46 years in LA. I went to Jordan for 10 years and then split my time now between Riyadh and the Philippines.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I live in Palos Verdes. Which is just
beautiful
south
place.
of Los Angeles.
Yeah, I know. I'm born and raised in L.A. Palos Verdes is a beautiful place.
Yeah, it is. It's a beautiful day today. Although they've been chemtrailing us like crazy over the last week.
You know, we were hoping with Trump coming in that would stop, with USAID maybe being cut. Maybe the funds to that would get cut. But apparently they're getting their funding from another source.
Well, something interesting, though, after we had the fire. So we had the tremendous amount of spraying in late December. And, I know people were saying, there's something going on. They're doing something. And then shortly after that intense spraying, which coats all of the brush with nano aluminum particles, which is highly flammable, we had these huge fires.
Yep.
And then Trump actually said when he landed in L.A., he said that, these fires, they're not really what they seem to be. And, there's something else going on there. He goes, I'm not going to talk about it, what I think that really was. But yeah, he hinted that there was some direct energy involvement in those fires.
He sure did. I remember that. Yeah,
because when you look at these pictures of some of these neighborhoods that are just devastated, leveled, the trees aren't burned. I mean, even the trees, we're green year round in LA, but there are trees that, in the wintertime, the leaves will turn brown and they're pretty crispy. And of course, those would be the easiest things to burn. Even those leaves weren't burned, but the houses were leveled.
Leveled. I mean, literally evaporated, just incinerated to ash.
Yeah. And you could just see, in some areas, you could see swaths of it's like in a straight line. The houses are leveled, and then there'll be a straight line where the houses are okay. And then another line where the houses are leveled. And they all go in straight lines. So it does seem that it was something, from the sky that destroyed those houses. My sister lives in Hawaii. My mother and my sister live in Hawaii, and her sister-in-law lived in Lahaina, and they had the same thing go on there, where the plastic didn't burn, blue cars didn't burn.
Yep.
Weird things like that. But her sister-in-law barely got out of there alive, because when they went down the highway to try to get out, the police blocked both exits on the highway. Now, that's basically the only way to get into Lahaina is along the highway, along the coast there. And they had blocked both exits so nobody could get out. But she was with her grandson, and her grandson knew the back roads of where the sugarcane fields are, all the dirt roads and stuff. And he took those roads and he got out of there. But, a lot of people didn't. and that's why the death toll was so high, is because the police would not let the people out of that city.
Yeah, you deal with the 9/11. I know with this, with your movie, which seems very highly acclaimed in various circles, and the conspiracy, it's much worse than you can imagine. I remember having a politician on like 2017, and he was in somewhere within Northern California, and he said everything you think your government is doing and the conspiracies you think about, and he was former military also. He said it's multiples worse than what you can imagine.
Yeah. My next project is coming out next week. Is it's a book called Sandy Hooked.
You mean I got a scoop going here? I got a scoop going.
Yeah,
huh?
You're the first one.
Damn.
You are the first one I've talked to about it, because I haven't released it yet. I'm just getting my drafts on Tuesday on the book, and should be released out next week. But so you got a scoop. So this book is it's kind of like Operation Terror. Operation Terror is, it's all it's a thriller. It's a political thriller, and it's a feature film. So it's not a documentary. And the reason why I did it like that is so you could reach people outside, just the normies, right? You could buy the DVD, which I ran out of, but you can get it on the digital copy. And then you invite your friends over that know nothing about 9/11, and you show them the movie, and they just think that it's an interesting political thriller, and it's just everything's all just made up. And then they get it embedded in their mind how something like that could have happened. And then after the movie, you say, do you know that many of those things really did happen? There really was a Building 7. There really was the you had Vice President Cheney, who was my opponent in 2000. He really was in the Emergency Operations Center and controlling, telling what planes to hit. He was really there. How
listener friendly is your clip?
What's that?
The clip, audio wise, how user friendly is this?
Oh, yeah, you can play those.
Yeah, it's pretty user-friendly. All right. Guys, this is an actual clip that you can find at operationterror.com. It's, again, it's a...
There is some cuss words in some places.
That's all right. We're alternative media. We're not FCC-controlled. And it came out 2015, so it's been out a while, and this is a clip from Operation...
15 billion barrels of oil in the Caspian Sea. I can't get it out. We need to use our military might to take that oil. The problem is the pacifist mindset of the American people. To wake them up, we need a catastrophic catalyzing event, like a new Pearl Harbor.
Our terrorists will attack the three pillars of American society: commerce, the military, and the government.
We are going to make the destruction of the Twin Towers by terrorists look as genuine as possible.
We've developed a weapon that cannot be used against any of our enemies. I don't know what we're going to use it for.
He betrayed me and his country. Terminated.
What the hell is going on here?
Of course, the order's still standing.
Fire!
Coming to theater near you soon, huh? Hey, you got some money put into that music, dude. That was pretty good.
Yeah, and the movie actually looked big, and it looks like a big production because we have so many wonderful locations. So since I live in LA, of course, that's movie capital of the world. So I have movie studios that I used. I used Air Hollywood for the interior aircraft scenes. I used another airport. We went to different parks and different, just a lot of just really fantastic locations. So most low-budget movies look low-budget because they're inside of somebody's house or something. It's just, it gets boring. But in this movie, it's just all over the place. And then when we, before produced it, we also color corrected everything, so everything blends in together. And yeah, we have a good music track throughout the movie. And so it does look like a much larger production.
Yeah. Like you mentioned, I know the Caspian Sea, I believe a lot of that too was, you're kind of alluding equally to you take over Afghanistan, the pipeline down to Gawandar, down in Pakistan, which the Chinese had already controlled before we got there. It's like, okay, that wasn't very smart, guys. But that was part of the reason why you wanted Afghanistan to build a pipeline from, like you say, in this case, the stands on down into Gawandar, where you could then pick up the oil from there. But a lot of people don't realize a lot of this does have to deal with oil. You mentioned kind of like a clean break there, where you're talking about the 9/11 whole story and a clean break.
Right, yeah. So my director picked up on that. And so what he did on the opening credits is he just has these things that are moving around. You really can't tell what it is. And then it becomes, and then you have a beat to it on the music of these things coming up and down. And then it starts to come into focus. And what these are just big oil derricks, coming up and down, because he just figures, well, we're pretending that the whole 9/11 was about oil. And so that's the very opening credits on Operation Terror.
So you're kind of like using oil to deflect a little bit, but then you take the whole operation that was 9/11 and you kind of put it into a theatrical form.
Right. Because we didn't want to get, too. I mean, after I did the movie, I've done more research, and I found out a lot of the ritual aspects of 9/11 and those kind of things. But if you get it too much into detail of why they're doing it, and it's hard to follow, too hard to follow. But if you keep it simple, that these evil bastards were just trying to control the worldwide supply of oil, it makes it easier to follow the movie.
Yeah, and it does make sense with Cheney and Halliburton and the oil connection there. That was certainly one of the veins that was behind 9/11. It wasn't the only, of course, but certainly one of the key ones. Right. Now, we want to just get into you, the person, for a little bit here. We got an hour here. It says here, I believe, let me check this again. It says you're a former mayor. Where were you a mayor?
In Bellflower. So Bellflower is...
yeah, I know Bellflower, but yeah, I know Bellflower, kind of like Signal Hill, Bellflower, that area.
Yeah.
So really, what was it like being a mayor of Bellflower?
It is... for me, it was a dangerous job. Because before I got in, or even when I did get in, but right before I got in, there were 5 people on the council, 4 were crooks and 1 was honest. And so when I got elected, it was 3 crooks and then 2 honest people, when I got elected to city council. And I got elected in 94, and then in 96, they're going to have another election. And I was going to support this retired mailman because he's an honest guy, and then the honest councilwoman that I was with. I was going to support them too in that election. I wasn't up for re-election until 98. So in 96, they knew what I was up to, so they canceled that election. And just like they would do in a banana republic. Yeah, banana republic, right? They postponed it for a year. So we didn't have the election until 97. And then that year, and then before they did that, they did all sorts of crooked things, like with the trash contract. That's trash contracts in California, every one of them is organized crime. And they, so what they did is,
by the way, before you go, when I'm driving on the freeway here in Riyadh's kind of like Los Angeles, the freeways and stuff are built, big white stuff. And I see the trash trucks going down. I'm like, man, this would be mafia in America. This would be mafia. Yeah.
So during that time, where between the time they canceled the election and the new election, they extended the contract for the trash contractor, and they did it in the middle of the night, literally in the middle of the night. So we have our council meetings in the evenings, and they had a really long council meeting, and they went on until well past 10 o'clock, and so they were telling the people there that were from the TV station, the local cable TV station, oh, go home now, because, we're going to be here too late, because they didn't want anybody to see what they were going to do. So what they did in the middle of the night, and there's nobody in the city council, it was about, I think, 1 o'clock in the morning, they passed a proposal to extend the contract for the trash contractor for another 5 years or something like that, so it would be extended beyond my term.
As mayor, you didn't have a veto? Say, no, I ain't going to let this go. I'm vetoing this thing?
No, I was a council member at that time.
Ah, okay.
So, yeah, so the way it works is that the council members determine who's the mayor. So when I have 3 crooks on the council, there's no way that Art's going to be the mayor. So in 97, in that election, then I did get the retired mailman elected, and along with the councilwoman. Now I had the majority. So it was 2 crooks and 3 honest people. And I became the mayor pro tem, and then the following year I was the mayor. And so I was able to make a lot of really great changes and stuff, but it was dicey. It was very dicey. In the very beginning, after I first got elected to the city council, it was very dangerous. We had, there was violence and stuff that occurred, and so it wasn't an easy job. And so I didn't run for re-election. I was out in 99.
Okay, then let's put this in perspective then. Let's fast forward this to Steve Bannon and his precinct strategy. How does take your experience and then look at Bannon and his precinct strategy, which seems like a very rational thing to do, in my opinion anyways, on a national level. How does that, how do you educate a MAGA wannabe, not a MAGA wannabe, but a MAGA advocate who wants to be, let's say, in local politics about the dangers you went up against?
Well, it doesn't encourage people to know what's in store for them if they go up against the corrupt machine, because my wife had a really hard time with it. Coming to the hospital and seeing me while I'm almost dead wasn't a pleasant experience for her, when she's pregnant with her 3rd child. So that's not encouraging. Now I'm far from being a MAGA. I voted for Chase Oliver for president, but
sure.
But yeah, for an honest person that wants to get involved in politics, I would encourage it, because if what was it? Pericles said that you may not take an interest in politics, but it doesn't mean that politics won't take an interest in you. Mm-hmm. And and I found that in my own experience. I didn't register to vote until I was, 30 years old, I think. Because I never really saw the difference between Democrats and Republicans. I look at the bottom line of, okay, well, when Democrats are in power, how much do they spend? Oh, yeah, okay. And then, so if the Republicans take over, what do they spend? Oh, they spend more. But then the Democrats take over, and what do they spend? Well, they even spend more. And it didn't matter, which political party was in there. They would just always spend more money. And, so I didn't really see the point in voting. And I didn't,
You're actually a kind of a revelation here. So the idealism, in other words, there is an interest now in politics that I think we haven't probably seen in quite some time with the MAGA type of environment. I'm not saying you got to be MAGA, but you know what I mean about the involvement in politics, and especially with the 2020 election, which you were a part of. A lot of people felt that was stolen equally. You're really giving a picture here that, wow, there needs to be like a super high focus lens on the local political machines, is what you seem to be saying.
Well, yeah. And that's where you can really make a change. I ran for higher office, not only the, vice president, but I also ran for state assembly and governor. And even for state assembly in California, that's a very expensive undertaking. It cost $1 million. I mean, when I got elected in '94 to city council, and a friend of mine, he was the state assemblyman, and he was a Republican, and we were turning from red to blue in the area, but they wanted to hold on to the seat, and he was going to run for state senate, or he did run for state senate. So he asked me to run for state assembly to take his seat over. And he said, well, if you run as a Republican, I can get you $1 million. And that's what it took just to win a state assembly seat in California, $1 million back in 1996. And I turned him down. I said, Phil, I appreciate that, but I see what that money does to the decisions that you make, and that's not the reason I got into politics. So I declined to do that. But it takes so much money, to get into the higher positions. But in local politics, anybody can do it. I mean, the two other people on on city council was a housewife and a retired mailman that I got helped get elected. And it didn't cost me hardly anything at all to do that, because they had no money, whatsoever. And I just put out one flyer to high propensity voters, and just a mailer I made myself, and folded it up and put a stamp on it and sent it out. And they went, they did some door knocking and that kind of stuff, and got them elected. Whereas the crooks, they were spending $30,000 to $50,000 a piece on the same election. And, and they lost. So an honest person can win with minimal funding if they get involved. I think one of the most important things is actually to get involved before you even run. Get involved in some local issue, and take the right side of that local issue, and you'll build up some name recognition, and people will know who you are, and that's an honest person, and he was on our side on this issue, and that helps you to become known and to become trusted and can defeat the big moneyed interest.
That's very interesting. Just real quick, if we can get this in, we have about a minute to go. I've put forward an idea that politics financing, and it's not going to change without a lot of power behind it, but financing for politics should become like domicile only. What I mean by that is that if you're running in a city council race, the money can only be raised in that city council area. If you're running for a state assembly, it can only come from that district. If you're running for a senate, only from that state, that type of thing. And there's no more of this cross, well, we got a break. We'll get into this after the break, Art. It's The Fetch with Art Olivier, again, former mayor and a former vice president candidate for the United States. Back after this. All right, everybody, welcome back. It is The Fetch inside DI Live, intelligent media. I'm drinking here. for the politically aware. Again, joining us now from the first half hour here of the third hour is Art Olivier. He's a former mayor. We've now learned from Bellflower, California, which I actually do know that. He was a vice presidential candidate for the U.S. presidential election, I think for the Libertarian Party in 2020. And he's produced very cool. What was it? Not 2020?
No, the year 2000.
Oh, I misread your Wikipedia page. All right, 2000. Thanks for correcting it. I'm half blind, so, forgive me.
Okay.
Literally, I'm half blind. I'm not even joking. And, of course, he's produced a really cool 9/11 film called Operation Terror, which you can find at, I believe, operationterror.com. So check that out, operationterror.com. Before we want to just go along with the scoop, since we have one. There's a lot of hosts here that have dealt with the Sandy Hook issue too, so a lot of interest here for sure. But my idea there, Art, is that money is too big in politics, meaning that why is like AIPAC buying a congressional seat in, let's say, some district in Kansas, for instance? Why are you involved? You know what I mean? Your money shouldn't even be allowed in that district. Why do these national PACs go out there and influence, let's say, a key House Republican district or whatever in any state? Whereas my idea is that, listen, because money's corrupting the elections, we need to make it to where the money can only come from the actual district from which the seat is being contested. Would that work? I mean, it could work, but obviously it's difficult to get in place.
That's very interesting. It's an interesting idea. The big problem is that who writes the laws, the election laws, is Congress.
Yeah, and, if you want to complain about Putin. Well, my point here, Art, is if you're going to complain about Putin, what's the difference between Putin and AIPAC, which brags about owning 99 House seats? What's the difference?
Well, Thomas Massey, the congressman from Kentucky.
Yes.
He said that he says almost every congressman has an AIPAC guy.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so to me, that means it.
Yeah, you'll have somebody in your district that is affiliated with AIPAC, and he'll be your AIPAC guy. And he says that, if you propose any legislation, that they'll say, "Oh, I'll have to check with my AIPAC guy."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and to me, that's what I'm thinking. That's one way. If the American people really want to get serious about this, just stop cross border, so to speak, funding. There's no reason why any PAC should be able to influence a contested seat, let's say, in San Jose area. You know what I mean? Why are you there? You're in New York. This is our election, not yours. Why are you influencing a California election? Technically, we're all sovereign states. So if one state, an NGO or whatever domiciled in Atlanta is affecting, let's say, something in Washington, that's foreign influence. I mean, it literally is foreign influence because each state technically is an independent entity. So there's no reason why Atlanta should be influencing, let's say, Seattle.
Yeah, but the unfortunate reality is that the laws, the election laws, are used against challengers. So let's say I raise $5,000 to run for something, and I'm running against a guy with $1 million, and I beat him. Well, they're going to come after me. They're going to say, "Well, okay, now where's your paperwork? Where do you show this?" And they're going to find something that where I have violated some election law, and I'll be sued by the state or the federal election committee or whatever, and and then it'll just look horrible, But I ran against a guy with $1 million, but he had a guy that was making $40,000 who took care of his entire election committee to make sure that he wouldn't run afoul of all of these election laws, because there's a lot of them. And anybody that's done one of these things, knows what I'm talking about. It's so many rules and regulations that you have to follow. And And then you end up getting fined. I got fined, for, I think when I ran for governor, afterwards, because there was something that I didn't do correctly, or I had a volunteer working on it and stuff, and he didn't do it right or whatever. But so the election laws themselves are written to make sure that the incumbents stay in power, because they're the ones that write those laws. And if you didn't have any campaign funding laws, then actually more challengers could win. Where somebody, because like, for example, when Trump won, I think the dragon, Elon Musk, he spent $277 million on the campaign. Well, he can't just contribute that to the Trump campaign. He has to spend that on independent expenditures. So there's all these ways of getting around the election laws, but not for the average person. So if I wanted to contribute $10,000 to Chase Oliver, that would be illegal for me to do that. But Elon Musk can spend $277 million on Trump's campaign. That's legal. So for the big boys, the laws are written to make sure that they'll continue to be abiding by the law and make sure that their preferred candidates will win the elections.
So it's basically rigged.
Oh yeah. Because
maybe not at the local
that never
level,
want to lose are writing the laws.
Yeah, so basically at the local level, people can play, but once you get even to the state level, maybe even a county level, it becomes exceedingly more challenging. Is what you're kind of reminding people.
Well, in California, other states aren't like that. I mean, like New Hampshire, you can win a state assembly district there, no problem at all, because you're only representing, I think 2,500 people or something, But here, you're representing 500,000 people for state assembly, and so it's very difficult to win that without $1 million.
All right, let's move over to your book since we got a scoop going here. You have a new book coming out. Give us the title on that and all that kind of fun stuff. Something to do with Sandy Hook, it sounds like.
Yeah, it's called Sandy Hooked. So it's Sandy Hook with an ED at the end of it. And it's a story about this kid that's 20 years old at the time. He lives in Sandy Hook, Connecticut. And so he's the same age as the person that the media tells you who committed the murders at Sandy Hook. And the way that I got the idea for the movie is I have a place out in the country. It's very remote. I have no internet access. I have no phone access. It's nothing at all. And I was out there one time for a couple of weeks, and so to keep myself entertained at night, I'd work during the day on my farm and stuff, and then at night I didn't have anything to do other than watch DVDs. I was there by myself, and so before I left, I downloaded in my phone 2,000 pages of the police reports on Sandy Hook. And what I discovered in those police reports was that it is nothing like what is in the media. It's nothing like what's in the alternative media. It is a totally different story. And because I looked at the local Newtown police report, I looked at the the Western Connecticut Regional Police, the state police report. I looked at the FBI reports. And all of these reports were collaborated each other. And the stuff in here is just blows your socks off. without giving up too much in the book, I'll tell you a little bit about what was discovered. First of all, the person that they said that did it, Adam Lanza, he was found by the first responders. Well, first before they even got there, the calls came in that there were shooters inside of the school. Not shooters. There was multiple shooters. And they actually arrested at least one of them. They caught him. He was running towards the Masonic Lodge that was adjacent to the school. And they caught him and they arrested him, detained him. And then as the police went into the school, they found Adam Lanza laying on the ground in a fetal position with his hands behind his back. It appeared to be cuffed. So the story in the media is that he shot himself in the head. But the story from the police is that his hands were behind his back and they appeared to have been cuffed. Now, one of the stories in the media is that this hero teacher that she was there at Sandy Hook, she was, and that she took 15 children and hid them inside of a restroom. Now, the restroom is just a little room with a toilet in it. The door swings into the room. The dimensions of this room are 3 feet by 4 feet 7. So she was able to go into this room with 15 children and then open the door that swings in, reach out, and then slide this bookcase in front of the door and then shut the door and then keep all these 15 children quiet as the massacre was going on. And you think about that.
Now these are coming from the police reports, correct?
No, the one I'm just telling you about right now about that is a media report.
That's a media report. So, okay.
Yeah, media report. And so in the police report, it was a different room, a different restroom that there were 15 children in, and they were stacked in this room. So there's 15 children stacked up in this one little tiny restroom, 15 bodies. Now, the person that they said was the killer was a 20-year-old that was 6 feet tall and weighed 112 pounds. It's
112.
Not a big,
come on. That's
yep.
Like I was skinny as a kid. I was 130, 135. I'm 5'11". You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You would have to have been so razor thin to be that size. My goodness.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, so he's not a big muscular guy. And so, the police, in the police report, they're just like wondering how the heck this guy was able to kill all these kids and have all this time to do it and then take their bodies and then put them inside of this restroom and stack them up, 15 of them high. It didn't make any sense to him. But this is what was there. And the 15th kid was still alive. The other ones were obviously dead, and they ended up laying them out on the floor. They took the one that was on the top, and they took him to the hospital. Now, they didn't allow the ambulances to go to the school. They were parked 1,000 feet down the road at the firehouse. So they had to put that one kid that was still alive, and they put him in the car, and they drove him down to the ambulance, and they took him to the hospital. He died. And but in every case of those 14 kids, the cause of death is redacted. They don't tell you in those police reports, they do tell you of what injuries these children had, but they're redacted. So you can't see that, okay, that kid died from gunshot wound? He died from a blunt force trauma? Was he stabbed? They don't tell you that because that's all redacted. They don't want you to know that. And so the excuse is, well, you know, we don't give the names of victims that are minors and stuff like that, because that's all redacted too. Well, okay, you already redacted what their names are. Why don't you let us know what the injuries are? And so this book, being that it's a novel, is written that this main character, he gets hold of the actual police reports, because he mows lawns for this guy that's a retired judge that's in his 90s. And so the retired judge is able to get a hold of the entire police report, in which he's able to read. And then he finds out, all of these occultish things that were going on during that massacre, in that it was basically a ritual. And so everything that, because I know what the alternative media is, mostly that no one died.
Yeah, I was just going to say, even people I think on this network who I think been sued have come forward with that statement or theory.
Right, yeah. Because Jim Fetzer, he did a whole book that's called "No One Died at Sandy Hook."
Yeah, you did. Okay, and, you're aware. Okay, great.
Yeah. No, I've been on Jim's show quite a few times. Okay. And we actually had we were going to have a debate. It wasn't Jim's show, but he was on as a guest. It was somebody else's show, and it was Jim, the host. I forget who the other person was, and they were going to debate myself and this lady Rebecca that lives in Sandy Hook, and going over this theory that no one died, and talk about the ritual aspects of what actually happened. And so in that that debate, somehow my audio did not work. I was left out of the debate, and they just beat up on poor Rebecca. But anyway, so the book is based on factual information, although it's very easy to read because it is a novel, and it follows this kid named Jimmy, who was 20 years old at the time of the massacre, and it follows him through the next 7 years as he ends up going to Yale University, and then so about the time he graduates, when in his senior year in law school, or actually not senior year, but his third year of law school, he is the end of the book. But during all this time, he not only reveals all the information from the police report, but then he learns from his mentor, this retired judge who was also a very high level Freemason, on a lot of the hidden history of the world and things that he learned. And one of those things is that this retired judge has all these map books in his library, and these books have these lines that he learned about in one of his higher degrees. And these, because my real estate attorney was actually one of the highest level Freemasons in California. And so these lines, most people know them as ley lines, L-E-Y, ley lines. Mm-hmm. And and so he knew about my lawyer. He knew about that kind of stuff. He said, but he didn't study that when he was going through he went through this 32nd degree. But a lot of them do. And so this retired judge is, that was one of his fields of study. And so this kid, he finds all these ley lines, and then he brings them into Google Earth, and he looks at them, and he finds that that the book is 100 years old, and so he finds all these buildings that are built along these lines. And what they do is they build things like obelisks and pyramids and schools, and then they all line up with massacre sites. And Sandy Hook, so Sandy Hook being one of them. So if you go onto Google Earth and you go from make a line from Stonehenge to Coquilco is a very ancient round monument in prehistoric in Mexico City. And you create that line. It also goes through the Temple of the Feathered Serpent in Teotihuacan, and it goes through Sandy Hook Elementary School. And so when they were going to build the Sandy Hook Memorial, I got the coordinates for that, and because I was interested to see, well, I wonder if they're going to build that Sandy Hook Memorial on the ley line. Sure enough, right? They have us like this little circular pond, and they have this sycamore tree in the middle of the pond on a little island, and sycamore trees are sacred trees, and the line goes right through the center of that little tiny island in that in the memorial. So the people that run this world, these lines are extremely important to them. And one of the lines that I discovered, there was a school in Yuma, Arizona called Desert Mesa Elementary School. And so the whole school is turned at a 45-degree angle because there's an intersection of these lines that go through the school. And I knew where three of them went, where the lines went to, these other important buildings. But I didn't know where the fourth one went. And so I slowly followed that line, and it took me to the Denver International Airport, which is laid out like a giant swastika, and there's all sorts of occultist paintings and stuff like that at that airport. And so I slowly followed that line because I'm looking for, maybe schools or something like that, and I have Google Earth, have all my labels turned off, and I see this building, and the line goes right to the center of this building, and the whole building is orientated with the line. So I thought, well, that's interesting. That doesn't seem like it's a coincidence. And I didn't know what the building was, and so I turned on.
Art, you got about 30. Art, about 35 seconds. I don't want to just have you cut. I want you to. You got about 35 seconds.
Yeah. I turned on the labels places. Yeah, I turned on the labels, and that building was Columbine High School, and that building was the cafeteria where the massacre took place. So I had no idea until I found that on Google Earth.
And you put this all together mainly from just the curiosity of the police reports from the Sandy Hook event?
No, actually, I discovered ley lines. The first one I discovered was the 9/11 ley line, but yeah, a friend of mine discovered the Sandy Hook ley line. He lives in Switzerland, and but I discovered the one that went through Columbine, and so we talk about that in the book also.
All right,
people can follow.
Out of time, everybody. Check out the work again. It's the website is operationterror.com, correct?
That's right.
And then we'll look out for this new project. We'll have you back on. It was a delightful time to have with you. Thanks so much for calling in.
Well, thank you.
All right. We'll hope to get you back on. Thanks, Art. Take care.
All right.
Okay, good day. All right, everybody. That's it. See you next week. Good night.